Live chaos. Jimin held Jungkook's hand for too long, live camera switched. Taehyung, don't. But Jungkook's voice was swallowed by the scream of a siren, just as Jimin's fingers curled tighter around his hand. The room was too silent for what was happening. The live broadcast was still rolling, the numbers climbing by the second, and yet the air felt suspended, like the oxygen itself had frozen. Their hands, locked together, trembled under the weight of something unsaid. The camera was still on them, until it was. In a sudden mechanical twitch, the main camera switched. It wasn't supposed to. It was on manual. But it jerked, abrupt and sharp, to the corner of the studio no one ever touched. The feed bled into static, then black. In the following heartbeat, chaos snapped back in. "Cut the feed," someone shouted. "Now." But it was too late. 2 million live viewers had just seen something they shouldn't have. Not a scandal, not an exposed romance. Something worse. Jungkook turned slowly, his body tight with restrained panic. Jimin didn't let go, not yet. His face was unreadable, too calm, too still, like a man watching the last piece of a puzzle slide into place after years of pretending he never had the box. "Did you see that?" Jungkook whispered, but Jimin's eyes weren't on him anymore. They were on the screen. The one only they could see. An encrypted feed flashed briefly, a pale figure standing motionless in the darkened part of the room. No sound, no warning, just a stare that sliced through the dim light and into Jimin's marrow. "I told them it wasn't gone," Jimin muttered. Gone, that word had history, weight, blood. Suddenly, the room exploded into motion. Staff yelling, backup cameras rebooting, fans flooding the chat with confusion, memes, and speculation. But behind the layers of performance and PR panic, something had returned. Something Jimin had buried. 5 years ago. The night they lost Taehyung. They'd called it an accident, a breakdown, a disappearance during an extended hiatus. But it was. Jimin had seen what Jungkook had refused to believe, something inhuman flickering behind Taehyung's eyes in their last studio rehearsal. It wasn't him, not completely. And when the cameras caught it, when someone tried to bring it into the light, Taehyung vanished. No body, no trace, just a closed room. And now, here it was again. That same signal, that same flicker. Jungkook was still frozen, lips parted, trying to reconcile what logic screamed was impossible with what he had just seen. Jimin finally let go of his hand. But the warmth remained. So did the scent, burnt ozone and cold iron. The same scent from 5 years ago, the one the doctors said was in his head. "Why is it back?" Jungkook asked, not quite daring to believe he was asking the question. "Because it was never gone," Jimin answered. They weren't alone. Not in the studio, not in their own memories. The chaos of the live feed failing was being spun by management into a technical glitch, but the world had seen it. For less than 5 seconds, but that was enough. Enough for forums to explode. Enough for theories to be revived. Enough for the past to come crawling back like a shadow that never really left. And as the studio descended into panic mode, Jimin did something unexpected. He smiled. Not because he was happy, but because he finally knew. The thing that took Taehyung had found its way back. And this time, it was hunting during daylight. Outside the studio, far beyond the screaming chat rooms and the flurry of damage control, a man stood by an alley with his hood pulled tight. His eyes glowed faintly under the street lamp. He was watching a replay. Frame by frame. Jimin's hand, Jungkook's face, the moment the signal surged. He didn't blink. And when the screen paused at the flicker of the pale figure in the shadows, he whispered. "Stage 1, initiated." Then he turned off the screen and walked into the dark. "Don't you dare lie to me again, Taehyung." Jungkook's voice cracked as he shoved Jimin back, hard enough that the younger man stumbled against the dressing room counter, knocking over a tray of untouched foundation and mic tape. The door slammed shut behind them, locked from the inside. They were alone, at least, in the way people tried to convince themselves they ever were anymore. "I'm not lying," Jimin said through gritted teeth, rubbing his shoulder. "I just didn't tell you everything." "You mean like how something inhuman just showed up during a live broadcast watched by 2 million people, and you looked like you were expecting it?" Jungkook was packing now, breathing hard, fists clenched like he was fighting ghosts only he could see. "How long have you known?" Jimin didn't answer. "Answer me." Jimin's gaze flicked up, cold and hollow. "Since Taehyung disappeared." The silence that followed was a vacuum. Neither of them moved. Outside, footsteps raced past the door, security scrambling, staff whispering about malfunctions, someone crying. But in this room, time was stuck between breaths. "I knew you were hiding something back then," Jungkook said, his voice dropping, trembling more with betrayal than fear. "We all thought you were just grieving differently. You stopped talking. You isolated. But you weren't mourning, were you?" Jimin exhaled slowly. "I was protecting you." "Bullshit." "It was feeding off us, off him. The moment we started gaining real momentum, do you remember? The music was sharper. The dances, something about them felt like we were being watched, like we weren't the only ones creating anymore." Jungkook sat down, head in his hands. "So it wasn't just me. I kept thinking I was going crazy. The dreams, the voices." Jimin looked up sharply. "Voices, you're hearing them again." Jungkook's head snapped up. "Again." "Fuck," Jimin whispered, backing away. "It's already starting. It doesn't wait anymore." "Tell me what it is." Jungkook stood, grabbing him by the collar. His eyes were wide, not with fear but fury. "I'm done with half-truths and poetic warnings. Tell me what the hell we're dealing with." "It calls itself the Conductor. Or that's what Taehyung used to call it before he disappeared." "Disappeared?" Jungkook shouted. "You mean taken. He was taken. And we let the world think he left for therapy and reflection and—" "He begged me not to tell anyone," Jimin cut in, voice sharp. "He thought if we played along it would let him go, but it didn't. It made him part of the act." The mirror behind them flickered. Not shattered, flickered. Like bad reception in a place where signals shouldn't even exist. Both of them stared at their reflections, which, for a split second, weren't moving the way they were. Jimin stepped forward slowly. "It's back," he murmured, "and it's stronger." "Then we go to the police," Jungkook said, breath hitching. "They won't see it," Jimin whispered. "They never do. It hides in signal, in sound. Frequencies only we seem tuned into. Maybe because we've performed too long, maybe because we gave too much of ourselves." "Stop speaking in riddles. God damn it." The door burst open, before Jimin could answer. Min Yoongi stood there, face pale, holding a tablet in shaking hands. "You two need to see this." He tossed the tablet on the vanity table. The screen showed a paused live stream clip from earlier. Someone had recorded the whole thing from a secondary angle, a fan's screen capture, already viral. Jimin holding Jungkook's hand. The moment the camera cut, but the frame didn't cut fast enough. Behind them, barely visible, but there was a silhouette. Too tall, too still, too sharp. No features, just presence. Unmistakable. Yoongi zoomed in. It blinked. Jimin stared at the screen. No, it was watching. Yoongi looked like he hadn't slept in days. And people are starting to notice. They're not joking anymore. Some are saying it's a spirit. Some think it's an ARG. But the serious ones, the ones on the deep fandom threads, they're calling it by name. "What name?" Jungkook asked. Yoongi hesitated. Taehyung's last stage name, the one he used only once before he vanished. "Karma." There was a beat of stunned silence. "Okay," Jungkook said slowly. "That's not just creepy, that's organized. This thing wants us to remember him." Yoongi sat down heavily. "And it's not just you two. My mic picked up a frequency during the broadcast, ultra-low, like a whisper layered under the bass, when we ran it through a spectrum analyzer." He pulled out a small audio device, pressed play. A distorted voice echoed out, glitched, distant, and yet too familiar. They could barely make out the words, but they landed like needles in the chest. "Don't forget the final act. Curtains never closed." Jungkook flinched. Jimin went still. I've heard that before, Jimin whispered. That night, the last message Taehyung ever sent me. Hyung, why didn't you ever tell me any of this? Because I thought I could fix it, that if I stayed quiet it would fade. But this thing, it's evolving, it's feeding on attention, and now it has an audience again. There was a knock at the door, a staff member, smiling too widely, too blankly. You're both needed in Studio B, she said. Management wants a quick reassurance live to settle the fans. Jungkook stared. You want us to go live again after that? But the staff member didn't blink. The audience is waiting. Yoongi slowly stood. That's not her voice. Jimin's breath hitched. We're already back on stage. No one moved. The mirror behind them flickered again. Only this time it smiled. Say it again, Jungkook demanded, his voice low and shaking, and look me in the eyes this time. The hallway lights buzzed overhead as they stood frozen outside Studio B. The door was open, wide enough to show the empty stage inside, too empty. No crew, no cameras, no staff, just a single spotlight glowing faintly at the center, humming like a living thing. Jimin swallowed. If we go in there, it won't just watch anymore. Yoongi scoffed bitterly. It already crossed that line. Did you feel it? The pressure, like someone breathing down your spine. Jungkook nodded slowly. It felt like being on stage for the first time again, terrifying, exhilarating, like if I messed up, something would punish me. The memory hit him hard, being 15, shaking backstage, heart pounding as the crowd screamed his name before he even believed he deserved it. The same sensation crawled back now, older and crueler. Jimin stepped forward, eyes locked on the light. That's how it hooks you. It feeds on ambition, on fear disguised as passion. And Taehyung, Jungkook asked quietly, what did it take from him? Jimin didn't answer immediately. He closed his eyes. He wanted perfection, Jimin finally said. Not fame, not applause, he wanted to transcend, to become something unforgettable. The conductor promised him that. Yoongi cursed under his breath. So it's a parasite with a god complex. A voice echoed from inside the studio. You always did reduce things to insults, Yoongi. They all froze. The voice was smooth, familiar, too familiar. Jungkook's knees nearly gave out. No, that's not possible. From the center of the stage, a figure stepped into the light. Taehyung. Or something wearing him. He looked the same sharp jawline, same dark eyes, but they didn't reflect light the way they used to. They absorbed it. His smile was gentle, practiced, devastating. You left without saying goodbye, Jungkook whispered, tears spilling before he could stop them. Do you have any idea what that did to us? Taehyung tilted his head. I never left, I just evolved. Jimin stepped between them instinctively. Get out of him. Taehyung laughed softly. Still protective, still lying to yourself. You felt it first, Jimin. You knew we were meant for more than this cycle of stages and screens. More doesn't mean inhuman, Jimin snapped. You let it hollow you out. Or fill me, Taehyung countered, eyes flicking to Jungkook. Tell me, Jungkook, when the crowd screams your name, don't you feel it? That pull, that hunger to give them everything, even your soul. Jungkook clenched his fists. I feel alive. That doesn't mean I want to disappear. Taehyung's smile faltered for the first time. Yoongi stepped forward. You're not him. You're just using his face to manipulate us. The lights flickered violently. The hum grew louder. I am what he became. The voice deepened, overlapping with another tone beneath it, mechanical, ancient. And you're all already halfway here. The floor vibrated. Images flashed across the walls, past performances, rehearsals, moments of vulnerability never meant for anyone else's eyes. Jimin gasped as he saw himself crying alone after Taehyung vanished. Jungkook saw his own hands shaking before debut. Yoongi heard melodies he'd written in his darkest nights, whispered back to him like accusations. Stop, Jungkook shouted. You don't get to use us like this. Taehyung stepped closer. I'm offering you control. No more fear of fatting, no more being replaced. Jimin's voice broke. You promised me you'd come back. I did, Taehyung said softly. This is me coming back. Jimin laughed bitterly. No, this is you giving up. For a moment, something flickered in Taehyung's eyes. Pain, regret, something human clawing its way to the surface. Jungkook took a step forward. If you're still in there, fight it. We're still here. We never stopped waiting. Silence fell. The hum died down. Taehyung's shoulders trembled. It hurts, he whispered. It never stops hurting. Jimin reached out, trembling, and placed his hand over Taehyung's chest. Then let us help. Don't perform anymore, just be. The light dimmed, the images vanished, the studio fell quiet. When the silence lifted, the stage was empty. No Taehyung, no shadow. Just the three of them, standing in the aftermath. Yoongi exhaled shakily. So, did we win? Jimin shook his head slowly. No, but we reminded it what it can't have. Jungkook wiped his face, breathing unevenly. What now? Jimin looked at him, eyes burning with resolve. Now we stop pretending this is just entertainment. If it feeds on attention, we change the narrative. Yoongi smirked faintly. You're saying we go public. Jungkook's heart pounded. Fear and determination tangled in his chest. If the stage is its hunting ground, he said, then we take control of the performance. The lights in the hallway turned back on. For the first time that night, they walked forward together, not as idols, not as victims, but as people who finally refused to be consumed. Did you put this on the set list? Yoongi's voice was sharp, holding a crackling edge of disbelief. Jungkook stared at the paper in his hand, jaw clenched so tight it hurt. The page was crisp, clean, too fresh, like it hadn't existed 10 seconds ago. The song title written in deep red ink wasn't a track they'd ever recorded. Not officially, not publicly. Karma Reprise was scrawled at the top, and beneath it in smaller print just 3 words. You promised me. No one has this file, Jungkook said, his voice barely above a whisper. Not even staff. We never even finished the demo. We deleted it the night before Taehyung. Don't, Jimin cut in, stepping closer. Don't say it, not yet. Yoongi snatched the paper, flipping it over, half expecting some kind of trick, an invisible note under UV. But the back was blank. Still, the ink shimmered strangely in the light, as if moving ever so slightly. Jungkook shoved both hands into his hair. It was his solo. He wrote it in one sitting, remember? It wasn't like the others. He said it came to him in a dream. It wasn't a dream, Jimin said, eyes locked on the empty rehearsal room. It was a signal, and we let him sing it. They'd gathered at the main studio to prepare for what management was now calling the redemption stage, a special live to calm the public storm that had spiraled from the mysterious footage. Officially, it was art. Unofficially, they all knew it was bait, and the thing watching them would be waiting. They stood in silence for a long time before Jungkook spoke again. If we perform that song, we're letting it in, aren't we? It's already in, Jimin replied. The question is whether we give it the mic. The sound of a door slamming broke the silence. Namjoon entered, flanked by 2 unfamiliar executives with polished smiles and cold eyes. He looked exhausted, his shirt wrinkled. His phone buzzing endlessly in his hand. When he saw the paper in Yoongi's grip, his entire expression changed. Where did you get that? Namjoon's voice wasn't curious, it was terrified. You've seen it before, Jungkook said. You knew. Namjoon hesitated. The 2 executives behind him didn't move, didn't blink. Something about them felt artificial, too still, too smooth. Yoongi stepped forward. Who are they? Namjoon didn't answer. Instead, one of the executives did. His voice was flat, echoing faintly in a way that didn't match the acoustics of the room. Observers. Jimin's heart dropped. Like hell you are. The second executive spoke, voice identical in tone. You are about to initiate something irreversible. We are here to record its unfolding. Jungkook moved in front of Jimin instinctively. You're not human. No, they said in unison. Namjoon finally snapped. Get out. I told you this wasn't the time. They didn't resist. They simply turned and walked out, each footstep too quiet, too light, as if they weren't walking at all but mimicking the action. Namjoon turned to the others, voice breaking. "I tried to keep you out of this." "You mean you tried to keep us blind?" Jimin growled. "You knew it was still active. You knew it never left." "I thought we could contain it," Namjoon whispered. "That if we kept the right stories alive, the right people silenced." "You're talking about Taehyung like he was collateral," Jungkook snapped. "He wasn't a story, he was our brother." Namjoon's hands trembled. "You didn't see what I saw after he vanished. The people who showed up, the deals that were offered, it was never just entertainment. It was a ritual." Yoongi slammed a hand on the soundboard. "Then why keep performing? Why keep feeding it?" Namjoon looked at them with something between guilt and horror. "Because if we don't, it starts taking from the audience." Jungkook took a step back, dizzy. "That's why fans have been reporting the dreams." "They're more than dreams," Namjoon said. "They're rehearsals." A phone rang. Not any of theirs. A dusty landline on the far side of the studio, one that hadn't been plugged in for years. Jimin walked toward it like a man approaching a loaded gun. He lifted the receiver. Silence. Then breathing. Slow, hollow, childlike. And then a whisper, so faint it was like wind moving through bone. "Sing it." Jimin slammed the phone down. Yoongi looked like he'd seen a ghost. "We need to burn that set list." "We can't," Jimin said. "If we destroy it, it'll just find another way to manifest. This thing, it's waiting for us to fight back so it can escalate." Namjoon nodded. "That's how it grows, through conflict, resistance." Jungkook stepped into the center of the room, fists clenched. "Then what? We just let it turn our comeback stage into a goddamn possession ceremony." "No," Jimin said, calmer now. "We perform it." Everyone turned to him. "But we changed the ending." Jungkook stared. "You're not serious." Jimin looked at him with the most haunted kind of resolve. "Every ritual is a contract, but what happens when the performer rewrites the final act?" Yoongi narrowed his eyes. "It'll fight back." "I'm counting on it," Jimin said. Namjoon shook his head. "This isn't just dangerous, it's irreversible." Jimin smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Good, then maybe this time it'll finally bleed." Outside the rehearsal room, the lights in the hallway pulsed once. Somewhere in the building, a melody began to hum through the vents, a broken lullaby none of them had heard since the day Taehyung disappeared. And deep in the server room, unseen and unwatched, the backup footage from that cursed live broadcast began to rewrite itself. Frame by frame. A new figure was appearing in the background. A fourth silhouette. One that hadn't been there before. One that looked exactly like Jungkook, only smiling too wide and staring straight at the camera. "What the hell is that?" Jungkook's voice broke in a whisper as he pointed to the screen. The grainy footage flickered, frames decaying like rotted film stock. But there was no mistaking it. His own face, staring back at the camera from the shadows behind the stage. Not blinking, not breathing. Smiling with a mouth that looked like it had been carved wider than nature allowed. Yoongi backed away from the monitor. "That wasn't in the original feed. I combed through every frame last night." "It wasn't there before," Jimin said, eyes narrowed. "It's not showing us the past, it's showing us what's coming." Namjoon leaned in, jaw clenched. "It's rewriting reality, preparing us for a performance it already believes has happened." The temperature in the server room dropped. Jungkook hugged his arms to his chest, but the chill wasn't physical. It was emotional, a deep, crawling cold that burrowed into the mind and whispered that something had already been lost. "You said it only feeds if we resist," Jungkook said, turning to Jimin. "But if we just go along with it, don't we lose ourselves anyway?" Jimin didn't answer immediately. He looked down at his hands, remembering the first time they trembled like this, after Taehyung's final rehearsal. How he'd kept telling himself it was stress, that the music was just too loud, the hours too long, the lights too blinding. But deep down, he knew even then, something else had taken the conductor's baton. He looked up at Jungkook. "We don't let it write the whole show, We choreograph around it. We rewrite from the inside, like planting a virus in a song. Jungkook shook his head. You're still thinking like an artist. This thing isn't symbolism, Taehyung. It's surgical. It rewires memories. It builds belief. Once it's in your story, it starts changing what you remember. Yoongi tapped the hard drive on the console. And what if it's already too late for that? The question hung there like a knife in the air. Suddenly, all their phones buzzed at once. Emergency alert, but not from any government agency. Just one line in bold red text. Final dress rehearsal mandatory. There was no location, no time. Then the lights in the server room cut out, and the door slammed shut. Jungkook cursed and backed against the wall. Okay, no, I'm not playing along with this anymore. Too late, Yoongi muttered. We're already in the next scene. A soft humming started from the far corner of the room. Jimin's head whipped around, heart slamming into his ribs. The same melody. That same damn melody Taehyung used to hum when he didn't think anyone was listening. Minor key. Fragmented. Like a memory trying to repair itself but falling apart every time it reached the chorus. A dim light flickered on at the edge of the room. A mirror, but none of them remembered a mirror being there before. Jungkook stepped forward cautiously. His reflection was delayed by half a second. It blinked before he did. He froze. Did you see that? Jimin nodded slowly. It's testing boundaries. Then, without warning, the reflection leaned forward. Its mouth moved. But the words came out from behind them. You're not the center anymore. They all turned, but no one was there. Jungkook stepped back, trembling. It's trying to split us. Yoongi reached into his jacket, pulling out a small field recorder. I've been tracking its frequencies. If we can find a baseline, maybe we can disrupt it live. Static, dissonance, anything it can't harmonize with. Namjoon grabbed his arm. You want to antagonize it mid-performance. We already are, Yoongi snapped. Existing outside its script is already defiance. The mirror cracked. Just one long, jagged line down the center. Jimin stepped forward. We'll use it, use everything it's trying to throw at us. If it wants a finale, we give it one. How? Jungkook's voice was raw. By becoming it, letting it wear our faces like masks. No, Jimin said, slowly reaching out and touching the cracked glass. By reminding it what it can never have. Which is? Yoongi asked. Jimin's reflection didn't mirror him this time. It stared directly into his eyes and whispered in his voice, redemption. The room exploded in light and sound. The mirror shattered inward, revealing a staircase behind the wall, dimly lit, descending into the unseen. The emergency alert on their phones buzzed again. This time with coordinates. And a title. Pre-show, The Descent. They stood there in silence, staring at the hole in the wall where a reflection used to be. Jungkook finally whispered, if we go down there, we might not come back. Jimin turned, eyes blazing. We're not going down to come back, we're going down to bring him back. No one said anything else. They stepped into the broken mirror, and the darkness swallowed them whole. The staircase wasn't made of stone or metal or wood. It didn't creak or echo or moan. It pulsed. Each step vibrated beneath their feet like it was alive, like it was remembering the weight of someone long gone. They didn't speak at first. The silence between them wasn't from fear. It was reverence, like entering a sacred place that no longer knew the difference between worship and sacrifice. Jungkook was the first to break. Are we under the building? Yoongi ran his fingers along the wall, which felt both wet and dry at once. There's no architecture in the plans like this. This wasn't built. Namjoon walked with his head down, calculating. Then it grew. Jimin was quiet. He hadn't said a word since they stepped through the mirror, his eyes locked on something far ahead in the dark. Not the end of the stairway, it had no end. But something else, something familiar. Jungkook moved beside him. You've seen this place before. In pieces, Jimin said. Dreams, flashbacks, I thought they were trauma. They were rehearsals, Namjoon said flatly. The descent twisted, Up became sideways. Gravity stopped obeying entirely. The air turned thicker, and with it came a smell, salt and metal and smoke. Memories flooded in. Confessions whispered under stage lights. Panic attacks behind velvet curtains. The taste of blood behind smiles. A door appeared. Not a real door. A suggestion of one. Like an afterimage burned into reality. Jimin reached out. His fingers passed through it like water. It opened anyway. Inside was a replica of the practice room. Their old one, from their pre-debut days, except older, ruined, like it had been abandoned decades ago. Dust floated through the air like ash, posters peeled from the walls. The piano in the corner was cracked and bent like it had screamed and no one had listened. Taehyung stood by the mirrors. Or something that wore his shape. He didn't turn as they entered. Jungkook's voice wavered. "Taehyung. You shouldn't be here," Taehyung said without looking at them. "We came to bring you back," Jimin said. "I'm not lost," Taehyung replied. Still staring at the broken mirror. "You are." Yoongi stepped forward, cautious. "What is this place?" Taehyung tilted his head. "It's backstage." Namjoon's breath caught. "To what?" "The real performance." Jimin walked slowly toward him. "Then why are you alone?" Taehyung finally turned. His eyes were not empty. They were full of too much. Grief, power, knowledge that broke something human in him. "Because I refuse the standing ovation." Jungkook stepped beside Jimin, desperate. "You disappeared. We thought you died, we thought." "I did," Taehyung said simply. "And then I was rewritten." Yoongi's hands shook. "This thing, this conductor, it made you into something else." "No," Taehyung smiled and the room trembled. "It revealed what I always was." "That's not true," Jimin snapped. "You were kind, you were full of fire and curiosity." "And I was tired of being mortal," Taehyung hissed. "Tired of bleeding for people who only wanted my echo." Silence. Namjoon stepped forward. "Then why haven't you performed?" Taehyung's face cracked, just slightly, a tremor of pain. "Because the final note never came. I was waiting for one of you to finish it." Jungkook looked down at the floor, at his reflection fractured beneath his feet. "I remember now," he whispered. "You sent me the chord progression. I ignored it. I thought it was a cry for help." "It was," Taehyung said, "but not to escape, to ascend." Jimin walked up to him, close enough to touch. "We can't let this continue. It's spreading. Our fans, they're dreaming things they shouldn't, seeing us in places we've never been." Taehyung smiled, softer now. "They've always seen us like that, bigger than life. We were never just idols, we were mirrors." "No," Jimin said, voice shaking. "We were brothers." Taehyung blinked. The mirror behind him shifted. Jimin reached out. "Come back with us." Taehyung's lip trembled. And then the lights shattered. Screams tore through the room, not theirs, not human. The mirror exploded inward, revealing a stage. Not a real one, an impossible one, stretching into infinity. Black audience chairs filled with shapes, some humanoid, some not. Every seat occupied by shadows that leaned forward in perfect synchronization. The stage was set. And Taehyung stepped into the center of it, arms outstretched. "I wrote the finale," he said, eyes glowing now. "And you all showed up on cue." The conductor arrived in pieces. A dozen limbs, too many eyes, smoke and cables and choir hums without mouths. It draped itself behind Taehyung, coiling around him like a crown. Jungkook grabbed Jimin's hand again. "You said we rewrite it from the inside. Can we still do that?" Jimin's eyes burned. "Only if we sing first." Yoongi pulled out his recorder. "Then give it something it can't predict." Namjoon stepped into the light. "Something true." Taehyung raised his hand, ready to conduct the end. And they began to sing. Not a song from any album, but the one they wrote, long ago, when they first promised each other they'd never let the world change them. The song they never released because it was too raw, too honest, too human. And the shadows in the audience began to waver. The conductor screamed. Taehyung froze. His body trembled. "I remember this," he whispered. The light from their voices cut through the dark. The floor cracked, and behind the stage, a door opened. An exit. Real. Small. And waiting. Jungkook held out his hand. "Come with us." Taehyung took a step. Then another. And the conductor lunged. Jimin screamed. Taehyung turned, smiled softly, and pushed them through the exit. The door slammed shut. They fell into silence. Into light. And into a studio that hadn't existed in years. Jungkook opened his eyes. The old practice room. Clean, whole. Yoongi sat up stunned. "Are we?" Namjoon nodded slowly. "We're out." But Jimin wasn't smiling. He looked at the mirror and saw only 4 of them reflected. Not 5. Taehyung hadn't followed. He stayed behind to conduct the conductor. The quiet was deafening. Jimin stood frozen, staring into the mirror that no longer pulsed, no longer flickered. It reflected 4 exhausted, broken figures, their faces pale with grief, eyes wide with disbelief, hearts still pounding from what they had just escaped. And yet, it only confirmed what they all already knew. Taehyung wasn't with them. He had chosen to stay behind. Yoongi dropped to the floor, legs giving out beneath him as he gasped for breath. The silence felt wrong, too clean, too still. He could still hear the static of the stage echoing in his ears, could still feel the unnatural pull of the conductor wrapping itself around Taehyung like a twisted encore. Namjoon staggered to the piano in the corner, running a trembling hand along the keys. They responded with soft, real sound. No distortion, no backwards notes, no voices beneath the melody, just a single, pure note that faded into air. "We made it out," he said, but there was no conviction behind the words. Jungkook sat with his back against the wall, head buried in his arms, shaking with something more than exhaustion. "He didn't hesitate," he whispered. "He pushed us through like he always did, always looking out for us even when we didn't deserve it." Jimin knelt beside him. He finished the finale. Yoongi looked up, pain carving deep hollows into his eyes. And he knew we couldn't sing it with him. The room felt like a grave. But slowly, gently, Jimin stood and walked to the center. He looked around, the scuffed floor, the faded posters, the speakers that had once blasted their very first harmonies. This was where they began. This was where they became them. He took out his phone and opened the camera. Not to film, not to post. To check the reflection. 5 shadows. For a brief moment, 5. Jimin smiled through the tears. "Thank you," he whispered. The others joined him at the center. Wordlessly, instinctively, they understood. They had to finish what Taehyung started, not the performance, not the ritual, but the memory. The real story. The truth behind the echo. In the days that followed, rumors flew like wildfire. The redemption stage was canceled without explanation. Fans flooded forums with questions, conspiracy theories, and breakdowns of corrupted live-stream footage that had now mysteriously vanished. Some claimed to have seen the figure in the background wave. Others said a voice whispered their name through their headphones. But none of it could be confirmed. Because the group disappeared from public life for 6 months. And when they returned, it wasn't with a comeback. It was with a confession. A documentary, raw, stripped down, no makeup, no choreography. Just truth. They spoke not of demons or ghosts or secret rituals, but of pressure, of ambition, of what it meant to give yourself completely to a stage and forget there was a person behind the performer. They told the story of a friend who gave too much, and a final performance no one would ever see. It went viral, of course, but not for the usual reasons. Something about it was different, unshakable. It didn't beg for attention. It invited healing. Jungkook, once too afraid to speak of dreams that weren't his, looked straight into the camera and said, "He saved us by reminding us we're more than applause." Yoongi released the demo they wrote together years ago, the one they'd buried. It wasn't perfect. It was cracked, unfinished, raw. And it was beautiful. Jimin stood on a quiet stage alone, 1 year later, playing a simple piano melody. No lights, no fans, just silence and memory. As he finished, he looked at the empty seat in the front row and smiled. Because in that silence, in that stillness, he felt him. Applause wasn't the ending anymore. Letting go was. And in that letting go, Taehyung's final standing ovation finally arrived, not with thunder, but with peace. The conductor was gone. The stage was theirs again. And this time, the curtain closed.